Welcome to Leader, the podcast where we delve into the heart of leadership and education, exploring the journeys and practices of those shaping the future for Black and Brown students in charter schools. I'm your host, Daryl Cobb, president of the Charter School Growth Fund. In each episode, we sit down with exceptional leaders from the charter school community, unpacking not only their successes, but also the profound personal stories that compel them to lead. Our conversations aim to surface actionable insights and highlight what it takes to build a great school. Whether you're an educator, a leader, or someone passionate about the transformative power of education, there's something here for you. Let's discover together what makes these leaders tick, the challenges they've overcome, and the wisdom they've gained. Welcome to a special edition of Leader to Leader. I'm Daryl Cobb, and I'm here at the National Charter Schools Conference, and we're bringing a very special episode today. I have with me the pleasure of having a leader who I've known a lot about, and I'm looking forward to this conversation and learning more. Pablo Villavicencio from, did I get that right?
Villavicencio.
Villavicencio.
Perfect.
Okay, there we go. My apologies for that.
Good.
My Spanish is not good.
You should have seen me as a kindergartner trying to learn it has 13 letters. So, it was definitely it took me a while to master my own language.
Your, whatever sport you played, the jersey.
Always went over and would cut off.
On the sides. Yeah. Love it. All right, well, I get the pleasure of speaking with Pablo for the next 30, 45 minutes. And why don't we start with your CEO of the Alliance?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the Alliance, and then we're going to jump back to young Pablo, and then we'll fast forward to the Alliance.
So I'm the CEO of Alliance College Ready Public Schools. We have 26 schools across the Los Angeles area serving over 12,500 kids.
Wow.
And I think we have probably over 22,000 alumni that are now doing amazing things, including teaching and leading in our schools.
Amazing. And how many former alums do you have back in your schools now? Roughly.
I think roughly about 100.
100 alums back in your schools. That's the test. That's what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
That's what we're trying to do in this work, is help young people get to the point where they can come back.
Absolutely.
And teach.
And also, I think for me, because I actually grew up in the neighborhoods that we serve, so I'm coming back to serve in a community that I wish I would have had a Alliance school. I wish I would have had that opportunity.
That's right.
My neighborhood schools failed me, and had I had Alliance, I think I would have been able to not only have a great quality education, but hopefully an education that affirms my Latinidad, affirms who I am as an immigrant child. And so I'm really proud to be able to serve my own community now.
That's amazing. And what grade spans do you serve?
We're middle school and high school. So
the fun years.
They're super fun.
You got the fun years.
They're brilliant kids who often are coming from our local neighborhood elementary schools. And so we get them 3 to 4 years behind. And by the time they graduate from us, our ELA SBAC scores are in the top 25% of the state. And so middle school is really a challenge because they're so far behind, but they stick with us. We're able to not only ensure that they're going to graduate high school, which was a very low bar that Alliance was first set up to address. But they're going to graduate. They're going to matriculate into college. We have a 90% matriculation rate into college.
I love that. Say that again.
Yeah.
You just roll that off like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Say that again. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, we're incredibly proud of our continuously high performance in matriculating kids into college. And we're beating the national average of kids persisting through college by 3.5 times the national average for kids who come from our neighborhoods.
Oh, that's incredible. All right, well, we're going to get to some of that magic, but I want to take our listeners back in the story. So tell me a little bit about where you're from and if you're leading now in the neighborhood where you grew up. So paint a picture for me of your experience growing up in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so both my parents are from the highlands of Ecuador. They come from a very small province, and they were from different villages. They met. My mother came here first to Los Angeles through migration networks. She had an aunt here, and so my mom was the first to come. My father followed, and so we have a very typical immigrant story. My dad has a 6th grade education. My mother finished high school because back in Ecuador, women were only allowed to finish high school, maybe one additional year to become a nurse or a secretary. And so when they came here, they worked factory jobs. We moved first to the south part of LA and then slowly moved our way up to what is called Nella, the northeast of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Big where
family,
we have
small.
just my mom, my brother, my dad who passed away, and then one aunt who lives here. And then I have over 100 cousins in Ecuador.
Okay.
I have over 25 aunts and uncles.
Okay.
Many of them who have passed away at this point, but all in Ecuador. And so we had a very small family network here. And so we're very close here. And obviously we had a lot of extended families in Ecuadorian culture. Everyone's an tío, tía, everyone's your cousin. And so I grew up with a lot of Ecuadorians, Mexicans, Central Americans around me that were family members.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
And who were you as a child? What'd you want to do? What'd you want to do?
You know, I think at first I really didn't know. I was the youngest of immigrant parents who were really scared to have us leave the house just because of the violence that was in the neighborhood. I attended a school that was a very low performing school where often they sent the worst teachers just because of tenure. And I know that it was a low performing school because it's still a low performing school. And I also know because when I had left, I was far behind in reading and math than my peers. And so I was a kid that was really just at home watching a lot of TV, trying to understand English. Spanish is my first language. My parents don't speak English.
Okay.
And my brother tried to teach me his Spanglish. And so, you know, it definitely was centered around home. It was centered around TV. And school wasn't a really affirming place. I didn't really enjoy school. Like, part of that was I just didn't see myself in any of our teachers. I didn't see myself in any of it was a predominant Latino school, but my name was changed from Pablo to Paul by my kindergarten teacher. She asked me to take she asked me to take on an American name. She said, I'm here, I need to learn English. You have to be Americanized. And so I think those subtle messages really didn't make school a place where I would thrive. I did thrive in the library, though. My mom would take me to the library once a week, and I had a great librarian, our public library, and I think that's one where I really learned a love for reading, even though I wasn't great at it. And I just loved the peace that I experienced in what was really a chaotic and violent school back in the 80s of Los Angeles in El Sereno. So,
wow. All right, we're going to continue on the educational journey, but you're from LA.
Correct.
Sports fan?
Big LAFC fan, so
LAFC.
love you know, Major League Soccer. Of course, Dodgers, who cannot love Otani, and the Dodgers is like, it's contagious. Lakers over Clippers,
Lakers over Clippers.
I live right in front of the Staples Center. It's not Crypto.com, the Staples Center. So I feel like there's such great like sports legacy in Los Angeles, and I feel incredibly proud of it. But I am a season ticket holder of LAFC. Love Major League Soccer, and so it's been fun.
Okay. Love that. Okay. So you're growing up in LA.
Correct.
You're at a school that is not affirming who you are.
Correct.
As a young person, but you're sitting here today as a CEO.
Yeah.
So there was some transformative process that really happened somewhere along the way. So give us a little insight into what happened.
You know, my brother is 5 years older. He really struggled. He had a special education need that wasn't diagnosed. He was heavily bullied, and there wasn't any support. And so my mother saw my brother, who was 5 years older, really fail at school. They were looking to move and to go to another place. One of my mother's comadres, which means, you know, it's a godmother, but it's the closest friend. She's like a second mother to me, lived in a really good school district. And it became really clear that the zip code mattered and what type of school you went to. And so my parents falsified our address for me to go to a school about 30 minutes outside in a suburb that was, you know, middle class, upper middle class. It felt like a world of difference between my very vibrant, beautiful community of El Sereno, but very impoverished and very gang-ridden and violent at the time, to go to a place like Walnut, California, which was middle class, had a lot of had immigrants who had come in the 70s or 80s but were educated, so a lot of Taiwanese, a lot of families from South Asia, and then you know, a large Caucasian population, and then a few Latinos. And so with that falsified address, I went to a great public school, and they didn't have that many kids who were free or reduced lunch. I was. They invested a huge amount in tutoring. I think they saw a lot of potential. They knew that I was undereducated, but still gave me a lot of opportunities. And then, it was a place where I really saw a possibility. I saw what it was like to be in an environment that said you could go to college. People graduate. It was an expectation that you're going to graduate from high school, where in the high school I was going to go to, it had a 39% graduation rate. Here, Walnut High School had a 98% graduation rate. There was no expectation other than you were going to graduate high school and that you're most likely going to go to college. And so I think I really credit Walnut High School for giving me those opportunities. And had I not, I wouldn't have gone to the University of California, Berkeley. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Which I think gave me this incredible liberal arts education that allowed me to really expand my horizons and to see my potential. And I think it hadn't it been for a lot of amazing sponsorship throughout my high school and college, I wouldn't have made it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. I'm a big Steelers fan.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, go Bears. So we appreciate. Anyway, that's a whole nother story that we can talk about some other time.
Don't talk about Cal football because it is the most disappointing experience for any of us.
I went to the University of Virginia, so I come from an equally long line of disappointing football.
So much potential.
Yes.
So much potential.
Yeah, just not.
But
good.
that's what we're trying to reverse.
Yes.
Letting that potential rise is what Alliance is about, not like Cal
I
football.
love that. All right, so you got to college at Cal.
Went to college at Cal, was, when you're in college, it was at the time where affirmative action was challenged in California.
Yep.
And so there wasn't that many Latino or Black kids in my freshman class. And so I also experienced the exact same thing. But what I think allowed me to navigate that was that I was coming from a place where there weren't that many Latinos in my AP or my honors classes that I was able to get into my junior and senior year. And but it was an isolating and difficult place. And had it been for student centers that really focused on identity affirming programming, like the Cesar Chavez Center, had it not been for the church that I found that really dedicated a lot of leadership resources into me, I don't think I would have actually succeeded. And even despite all those supports, college wasn't easy. I had to take some time off at different points. I took a semester off because I got an impacted tooth. I went to Western Dental because I didn't know anything else other than to go to the dentist in Oakland. I had a $3,000 bill. Took a semester off to work and pay it off because I had no supports. But I think with a lot of resilience and grit and just seeing others graduate, I was able to navigate that. And I graduated, obviously not on the 4-year timeline, but I was able to graduate. And I think had it not been, for others around me who were being my champion and saying, you can do this. And also just a deep fear of failure and a deep fear of being homeless, which really kind of like motivated so much of I'm going to do whatever it takes. It comes from an immigrant mentality. I don't care what I need to do. I'm going to graduate college. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to fight for, and then, I think that's what, Cal taught me a lot about what it meant to fight. Thriving is a little bit later, but definitely to fight.
That's good. Well, and I think your story is so reminiscent of so many other stories.
The story of our kids.
The myth of you go to college and you graduate in 4 years.
Yeah.
Like there's a handful of people and of our population for whom that is true.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of people, it is not a straight line to enter at one institution, I stay at the same institution, and 4 years later I'm walking out with my cap and gown. That's just not
you
the
just
story.
need so much support, and you need not to have the financial burden. And I really didn't have any financial support. Right. Not only that, but I was asking to help family in Ecuador who really needed that financial support, right? And so I had to work during college. And I also had to ensure that nothing went wrong, like an impacted tooth,
right,
or a class that I didn't do well because I missed an assignment, and not knowing how to navigate that system. Like you just all these things that we don't realize that are soft skills that kids need to learn to navigate and to persist through college. And so I think I'm really proud of Alliance has done always a great job of investing heavily in our kids, of making sure that they are not just prepared academically, but more than ever now are prepared with those soft skills to navigate. And I think that's why our persistence rate, even though it's not at the 75% we want, it's 3.5 times the national average, as I've said.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump. You graduate Berkeley. How did you get into education? Did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
Oh no. It's education. I was interested in when I studied political economy of industrialized societies in Berkeley, which is a very Berkeley major.
That's a very I've never heard that. Yeah, that's a very Berkeley major.
The mix of political science and economics. And what I was actually most interested in is learning why people had to immigrate from their countries into really the North, the global North, and what were the push factors that could be addressed to help people not have to make that choice. Because I saw how challenging it was for my parents to survive. We grew up in poverty, and my dad worked 2 jobs in factories. My mother took care of neighborhood kids, where I was raised on less than $18,000 a year. And it was a struggle, even though my dad was really a smart guy. He wasn't highly educated, but he was incredibly smart. And my mother was incredibly, had an EQ that is incomparable to anyone. And here are 2 really brilliant individuals who weren't given opportunities and had to work really hard. And so I was thinking, had they been left in their countries and had their countries given them the opportunities, maybe that development would have prevented them having really what I thought experienced the trauma of poverty and immigration that often comes with us, even though it's a beautiful story as well. And so I worked on a project that was sponsored by the UN dealing with issues of immigration, or really economic development in Brazil, Mexico, and Chile, trying to figure out how do you create tools that allow local stakeholders like farmers and government officials the same information and data sets to be able to make decisions that enable them to have economic prosperity and agency. And so this was a really great project. I was a snot-faced.
Fit your major.
Totally. It was like to a T. I was like this mocoso, which means snot-faced kid, and dealing with ministers of environment and ministers of treasuries in different countries. And it taught me so much. But what I realized is that even though there was a lot of amazing individuals at the local countries that we were supporting, large international bureaucracies were never going to solve the problems of local issues.
That's right.
And local expertise was being trumped by a snot-faced kid that just graduated Berkeley. And so,
all the time, story all over the place.
Yeah, and so that's why I decided to, I was trying to think of what's the local unit of change that matters the most? And I thought about school, I thought about my high school. And had I not gone to my high school, I wouldn't have had those opportunities. And so I ended up doing Teach for America. The irony is that I went to go work for the New York State Department of Education, which is a massive bureaucracy dealing with a lot of issues at a local level. But even you could argue the local level of Staten Island is very different than the Bronx. That's right. But had it not been for Teach for America, I wouldn't have gone to education. Wasn't even willing, looking to stick with education. I was really wanted to look at systems of change and how do you make that change happen.
Okay.
Thought I was going to be a lawyer. A week before I was going to go to Duke Law School, my principal had begged me because we had just gotten our results. And I was the only classroom in the entire school, in the South Bronx school, that had double digits, over 30% growth. And he's like, please stay another year. You're never going to have an opportunity to make an impact. I was like, if I can loop with my kids, and if I can take over all the English language learner development at the school, then I'll stay. Right. Which was such a bold, ridiculous thing. I even moved my desk into his office, which is ridiculous, by the way. I'm the arrogance of this 27-year-old kid saying that I could do this. But had I not done that, I would have ended up going to law school. And we were able to turn around a really poor performing middle school into a good school. Not a great, but a school that we're really proud of and that kids were learning. And that showed me the power of transformation. I think what I've always been interested in is not so much education itself. I know there's wonks out there, people who love curriculum and instruction. What I love is just fixing things that could go from good to great or from bad to good. And so I think I've always looked to increase my impact.
Something I've always respected about you is I see you with other leaders. I've heard stories about you with the students and at the Alliance. Yeah. And everybody always comments on your ability to build relationships. Yeah. And it's just an authentic and special part of you. So I'd love to jump from New York City to the Alliance, but I would love to hear about where does relationship building play in your kind of leadership and helping to achieve those things you said at the beginning about the Alliance.
I'm going to have to go back to New York, though, just for one, just because I think, when I was offered the opportunity to open up my own high school in the city of New York, I was taking on a population that had a 10% graduation rate. These were English language learners that had arrived in the country after the age of 12. And so many of them had not mastered their native language. Okay. And then we're having to take exams in a second language. And New York State had regents at the time, which were a rigorous bar, unlike California or some other places. And so kids just didn't graduate. And so we built Bronx Bridges, which I'm really proud of. And in doing so, it was just this idea that if you create environments where you really believe in kids and you believe in their brilliance and you see what is often viewed as a deficit as an asset, then you're able to really just get massive gains. And it could all be summed down to, I hate to be as simplistic, but by really loving kids. And, we were able to get within 4 years, 66% graduation.
From 13.
From 10%.
From 10.
And then 88% of 5 or 6 year graduation rate. And we lost very few kids, about 1 or 2.
Okay.
And it was this beautiful story. And honestly, the instruction wasn't amazing. I've now learned a lot about instruction. And I think my successor did a great job with that. But it was just love. And I knew that if I could see that on a small scale, then it must work at a larger scale. And just this idea of belief and love. And so coming to Alliance, it's easy to love my community because I'm from the community. I see my kids in my own. But when I arrived there, it wasn't an asset-based approach to our kids, which is very similar to a lot of charter schools at the time. I think charters have grown tremendously, and I think the change of leadership has had a lot to do with that. And there was never a lack of love or a lack of belief in kids. But there was a deficit language that was often talked about our families and our parents. And I could not tolerate that because you're talking about my parents. You're talking about Cesar and Beatriz Villavicencio. And when I got there that first year, I almost didn't make it in the charter world because I didn't see them viewing our community in this asset-based approach. I saw pockets of it, but I didn't see it consistently. And I think over the course of time, what we've done is to really center this idea that you have to hold a high bar for kids. You can never lower your expectations for them because they'll know. Because kids already believe all these, they're getting these messages from the world that tell them they're not good enough.
All the time.
And so if an adult that's proximate to them tells them or affirms that in any way, then it's just going to reinforce a narrative. And so you have to be 100% college. You have to be 100% this or that because you really have to motivate them to believe the best in themselves. And you have to really like kids and love them if you're going to do that for a long period of time. You can do that in one little conversation, but if you're going to be in and out in the classroom,
day in and day out,
you got to really love our kids. And if you don't, then that's fine. Don't work at Alliance. Just don't work in our communities who need champions. And I think it also helps that that we've really been intentional in ensuring that our educators and our leaders represent our community. And so over 70% of our leaders and over 75% of our teachers are Black and brown, come from our communities, are often similar to our communities. And so I'm really proud of the fact that we're creating a network of schools that are high performing, but it's by the community for the community. And I can hear that in the way that kids talk. I can see the pride that they take. And that's been actually so critical in a moment like we're experiencing in Los Angeles, where the messages about who you are so deficit-based. You're illegal. You're a criminal. You are unworthy to be in this country. You should be treated like an animal. To have a place where it could be safe and you have adults that look like you, that believe in you, that know the community is beautiful, I think it really speaks to why we're getting the results that we are and why we're outperforming our peers and by far our neighborhood schools. And I think it just comes down to love, which is relationships, of course, as you're naming, and having a human connection that obviously holds the highest bar of rigor, but centers this idea that our communities have been oppressed. Not in a deficit view. It's just a fact.
That's right.
Speak to any Black or brown person in the country. No one needs to convince me this isn't a deficit thing.
That's right.
The reality is that it is. And we can do something about our own spaces. We could do something about the way we see ourselves. We could do something about reclaiming agency. And so I'm really proud that we're slowly getting to a place where across our network, we're really inculcating these ideas in our kids that see them as transformative agents in their own communities. And that's what I really hope for Alliance one day, that our kids go to the best institutions of the world and that they're transforming communities that they came from or like the communities that they came from, showing the world the brilliance that exists in South LA, East LA, and the Valley.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. To find the adults to do that.
Oh gosh.
Right. To find the
Why are you asking
right,
me this hard question?
What you're describing is what I think every educator would say all schools should do. And we know that most schools don't do it.
Yep.
So how do you find the adults who are able to not only love the kids, but at the same time hold high expectations?
Yep.
That kids are not only going to walk out of here feeling loved, they're going to walk out of here knowing how to read, write, and compute at college-ready levels.
Yeah. I mean, I think our founder, Judy Burton, was brilliant to call the network Alliance College Ready Public Schools. From the get-go, there's no illusion of what you're signing up for.
That's right.
You believe that our kids can go to college, point blank. But I think over the course of time, there are so many narratives that are coming. College isn't for everyone. Maybe our kids have too many obstacles that really focus on just the social emotional because the academic is too hard given the isolation and the real trauma that our communities have experienced in the pandemic. And I think what we have been able to do is a couple things. One, we ensure that we're the most competitive in our marketing and recruitment of like educators by being a compensation leader. So one of the first things that I did when I first came into the network, and my predecessor was part of this transition, is to ensure that we were paying 20% above. Now, all my peers hated me, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And then, of course, it elevated the bar. But I was a teacher. I knew what it was like to live as a teacher, and I was like,
especially in LA.
And if I'm going to bring Black and brown people who are coming from low income backgrounds into teaching, you know, like I need to elevate the game of what the competitive of the best of the best. That's right. So we're a compensation leader with our benefits and of course our salary.
Love that.
Then we need to make sure they came. And we had a lot of folks who came and a lot of folks who stayed. We have long-term educators. We are very proud of that. So we really focus on retention. You have to be the best place to work. Our retention rate is in the high 80s.
Wow.
You know, I think last year have been anywhere between 87 and 91% over the course from the pandemic. And we have net promoter scores that are in the 80s.
That's counter to what we're seeing in
totally
across the country.
But you have to be a best place to work. You we find mission aligned people, and so I think people are really drawn by our mission. I think they're hopefully inspired by the fact that they see leadership that represents them. We ensure that it's a good place to work, and so we're trying to solve problems with them. We're trying to figure out what are the issues that are facing our educators. What do they want? We know there's generational changes. Anyone who's talked about this can say a Gen X worker is different than a Gen Z worker. Right. They're teaching us a lot, though, Gen Z, that enables us to think, okay, you know what? How do we get ambitious, audacious results and not have to like end up in, you know, burnout like so many of us who have left education as a result of that, right? And so out of that came one of the things that we're doing, which is called Reimagine the Alliance Educator, where you know, in places that are high performing like Finland or South Korea, when you look at the percentage of time in actual planning compared to teaching, you're talking about half and half. Yep. In America, we're funded for 90% in direct instruction, 10% in planning, if at that in charters.
That's right.
And we're expecting to get amazing results. So we're like, that's not going to happen as we focus on, you know, the instructional core and intellectual preparation and making sure we're taking data-driven meetings and making sure that our curriculum is culturally relevant and that people are able to find materials that really are going to speak to our kids. And so I think what's been interesting is when we're trying to solve that, what we've done is pilots where we now have 10 hours of protected planning time for our teachers. And we're seeing results.
That's why teachers want to stay.
And so teachers stay because they know that we're trying to work through the problems. Now, of course, never feels like enough. We need to figure out where to get more money. And I'm like, hey, the state of California and education itself is going through a lot of fiscal concerns right now. We're not going to be able to provide everything, but I think our mission-driven culture, kids seeing that, adults seeing that kids are winning, and then ensuring that we're solving problems with them has gone a long way.
Yeah. We're here at the National Charter Schools Conference.
Yep.
You all are doing an amazing job across LA serving the kids that you have in your network today.
Yep.
What's preventing you from serving more kids?
I think for a long time, we grew really fast.
Okay.
And so there was a moment where we're like, look, we need to ensure quality.
Yep.
And that's really difficult, right? Because you have to show the added value proposition to families. And if you have schools that are not providing that and are tarnishing your name, then you have to ensure that you have systems and structures because, when you scale, it can be the Wild Wild West where you're scaling from 1 to 28 schools, which is where we scaled, just because there's opportunity. And of course, we seize that opportunity. I'm so thankful we did because right now we're not in a moment of opportunity to be able to grow. In the context of California, Los Angeles specifically, which is incredibly anti-charter, and which is what we're trying to change the conditions to work. And so one is a political context that really requires us to change us not only into operators. Of course, we're running a business, we're running a system. We also have to be political agents that are helping transform the advocacy, are advocating changing the political conditions that enable us to grow or not grow and figure out new opportunities. So if they're not allowing us to open new schools, then what's our merger and acquisition approach? What are we going to do to find other neighborhoods within the Los Angeles? Because I think the multi-state approach, as we've talked before, is really challenging because context change, really when you're dealing with multiple authorizers is really challenging.
Yep. That's
true of California in the way that we're authorized. But, we can figure out, okay, within this locus of control of the Los Angeles, Southern California region, how do we continue to expand? Because unfortunately, the quality of our schools in Los Angeles has not dramatically improved. It's dramatically improved because of the charter movement, but really in terms of absence of that, it hasn't. And I wish, coming from the district, because I'm not like rah charter guy, I'm like quality education guy.
I'm like kids guy.
I'm equity and quality all the way.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I believe that we could be serving a lot more kids. I'm proud of the 12,500 kids that we serve. I'm proud of our, almost 23,000 alumni. But I want to see more Alliance kids who are going to college, persisting through college, and then being change agents in the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I would love it. I will love it. I'm going to speak it into existence.
Put it into existence.
Right, where
my board would be very happy.
Your biggest challenge as the Alliance is that colleges need to adapt because you're sending so many highly qualified, ready to be day one freshmen to their schools that they can't handle it.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I love for you.
That's what I want for us as well.
That's what I love for you. That's what I love for you. All right, 2 questions, and then we'll get out of here. One, I know you have a particular passion around seeding more Latino educators to do charters.
Absolutely.
And you've been involved with an organization called Leal. So give us a little bit about that founding story.
Darryl, because you keep on asking for your financial support, Darryl.
I know.
Here's the reality. There are the fastest growing population of charter kids are Latinos.
That's right.
And we, other than the examples of Alliance and a few others, are in predominant spaces where the educators don't represent the community or don't fully understand.
They don't reflect.
And that needs to change.
Okay.
And part of that is a pipeline issue.
That's right.
You have to think and you have to identify and nurture. If you're part of a culture that is under attack, and we're now seeing that in its full-blown iteration with the ICE attacks, then of course those pipelines are not ready because we haven't had a long tradition, which some other groups have, seen educators in their families over multiple generations that give them a vision of what's possible to be an educational leader in this country. That's not true for us, even though we have been in this country way longer, and we were in this country
from the beginning
before it was this country.
That's right.
Especially for those who have stronger indigenous roots. And without those pipelines, that takes intentional work of organizations like the Charter School Growth Fund, of organizations, of foundations, rather say, we're going to invest in this. We're going to really ensure that we're preparing for the future by helping identify early on amazing teachers, amazing staff members who we know want to take on the mantle of leadership, which is incredibly hard, and nobody really wants to do that within the educational space right now, unless you're at Alliance, which we're seeing amazing people wanting to come into that space. I'm really thankful for all those pipelines that we built. And that takes nurturing, identification, and it takes a different kind of programming. A lot of the programming that we see in leadership development right now is very focused on technical skills.
That's right.
And the truth is that, when someone's emotional house is not in order, when someone's identity is not affirmed, there are leaders who just out of grit and ambition get there, but can cause a lot of damage because they haven't really done the internal work to navigate the stressful conditions of being a leader in this environment. And often don't affirm the best of Latino leadership, which is relational leadership, which is really drawing from our ancestral practices, which is really ensuring that we're building upon collective and communal thinking. And will then really perpetuate practices or ideas that, of course, can get short-term results, but don't get long-lasting results that ensure kids persist through college. Because we had a whole generation of charter kids who got amazing academic education, but still didn't persist through college. Why? There has to be something deeper, something about the affirming of identity and the affirming of self that is necessary foundation to build on technical skills. So what I often call this adaptive leadership, we're in the space of identity and interrelational skills, other components. We're at a conference, you're going to hear some background. But I think that's what we're hoping. I believe that we need more programming that does that. And as operators, we want to see that not only for our own systems, which we're investing a lot within our systems, but we also want to see other systems do that, because I want to fight. Like I'm hearing from educators, Latino educators across the country that are networks that are talking about immigration in deficit view, that are not necessarily seeing all the potential of the Latino communities.
That's right.
That often are pushing English-only initiatives. You go so much further if you're able to take the language of the first language and transfer that to a second language. This is like, there's science behind this.
Yes.
But because there's not Latino representation in leadership that's actually showing different perspectives, showing what's possible, that gets shortchanged. And so my hope is that there is a real investment in Latino leadership that requires early pipeline identification, that is in identity affirming programming, that starts with the charter leaders being the champions of this, because you are necessarily going to be in schools that are predominantly Latino at one point or another.
Given the context that we're living in today, given the context that you're living in LA, talk to me about hope.
Yeah.
What's giving you hope today?
You know, I think our kids, I mean this with, like, I hold a CEO advisory committee for scholars and parents and teachers and whole groups. By scholars, my favorite group by far. Basically a leadership class that we have with 20 scholars across our Alliance schools.
Okay.
And I not only hear in them this sense of like everyone's born with an innate sense of hope, I believe. Despite circumstances that feel so atrocious sometimes.
That's right.
There is something about the human condition that aspires to, that reaches out for light and that believes in hope. And when you're talking one-on-one with kids, even in middle school and high school, that you feel like sometimes kids can be very jaded by the time they're 12 or 13, you still see that belief in them. You see that belief that there is a world of possibility there that's eroded slowly, and you have to like sometimes draw that out. But I hear kids talk about what they want to be. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be able to buy a house for my mom. I want to ensure that we don't live in a one-bedroom house, in a one-bedroom apartment anymore. I want to make sure that I am able to be the president of the United States. And, you know, lots of folks will be like, that's not going to be for them. And they believe it in themselves. They believe that I could do that. Yeah. And my response is, you don't know that, because more than likely they have the innate brilliance.
That's right.
They have the innate intelligence.
That's right.
They just have to be nurtured.
That's right.
And so I think seeing that hope in them, but also seeing kids who have gone through our system doing amazing things. I just interviewed this amazing woman that is one of our graduating, one of our graduates, who is going to be our VP of data and infrastructure.
Wait, one of
our kids who went to Yale.
It's going to be a VP.
He is a vice president of data and infrastructure. Now she could be anywhere, because this young woman, this woman is brilliant. And so I juxtapose the sense of possibility, and then I see the possibility, that promise and potential materialize. And then I just have to look at myself and my own story. And I'm like, you know what? That gives me a lot of hope, even in a place. And I have to believe that hope in a place where it feels that things are really out of our control, that we will take things that are in control and create spaces that are beautiful, that are affirming of our Latinidad, that are affirming of our Black and African American kids, that are affirming of the diverse cultures of Los Angeles. And that regardless of what happens in the world, we're going to create a proof point of what it means to be communities that are thriving and that are giving opportunities to each other, that are not seeing a zero-sum mentality, but that are going to lift each other up. And so I still hold on to that belief, and I think our kids give me that hope.
Pablo, you have accomplished so much in your leadership, and you've overcome so many obstacles. What would you say to a young leader who might be out there today listening to us about what they need to do to overcome the obstacles that are put in front of them? And today it's more obstacles than ever.
Yeah.
Especially if they're a leader of color. So what would you say to a young leader like that?
You know, I talked a little bit about before that I was so deathly afraid of being homeless or unhoused. And I want to actually go back. When I was growing up, I was afraid of just economic survival because there were periods of time where that was my reality.
It's not true.
And at every single juncture of my professional career, I lived in fear. And I lived in fear of being exposed, that I should not be at the table. And now I know there's a lot of conversation now in the lexicon talks about the imposter syndrome, right?
Yep, that's right.
But it is very real to not feel like you belong. And it could be for lots of reasons. You grew up poor, you grew up X, you grew up whatever. And for me, it was, I grew up poor, I grew up Latino, I grew up gay. I grew up in a time where my name was asked to change and my language was viewed as a deficit. And so those messages really reinforced in me the sense that I was not good enough. And had I not had a couple things. One, find people who are going to remind you how brilliant you are. Even if you have to be delusional about it at times. You want to find champions. And you want to call those champions when you are really down on yourself. And I had those champions. I had people who believed in me, even at times where I did not believe in myself. Call them, ensure, and tell them that's their job. Tell them, you know what, when I want to give up or when I'm not feeling that I can take this leadership role on, I need you to remind me of why I'm in this, center your why, and that I'm good enough. And that I was innately born with everything else that everyone has, and that I should not be questioning myself as am I smart enough or good enough or not. And trust me, when I first came into the charter movement, I got a lot of like folks who didn't affirm me, and I had to call on them. And I'm at Alliance 8 years later as a result of those individuals. I'd also ask you to really just do the best at what's in front of you. People will gravitate to when you're doing good work or great work. Amen. And they'll see that.
Amen.
And I think a lot of people are just ambitiously trying to reach the next thing, because of the desire for more money, the desire for a better title.
That's right.
And it's also just generational. It's ingrained in this idea that, like, if I'm not a VP by 28, I failed. And I was like, really, what? This is like mind-blowing to me. Vice presidents, I thought they were like 50 years old and should be able to, but I'm like, remember that what matters the most is that you're doing great work and that you're having an impact in the work, and people will see that.
Yeah.
And there are things, of course, of learning how to champion yourself or do other things. But if you're doing good work, people who are in positions of leadership are taking notice. I'm taking notice. And so just do the work you have in front of you at a brilliant level. You'll get to the next step.
That's right.
Right. And so I think those are the two things I'd say.
Okay. I love that second one. I had a boss early in my career, and he used more flowery language than I'll use on this podcast. But he said, the best thing you can do is be the undeniable best at your current job.
100%.
And so every time you come in to talk to me about your review, the first question I'm going to ask is, are you the undeniable best at your current job?
100%.
And I'm like, that is words that I
and that's getting harder to explain to folks, because that's something that might be a generational shift, that might be a cultural shift, that might be a feeling unseen, and so people are now using their voice. But it's sort of an overcorrection to what ultimately use your voice, but have show receipts.
That's right. One other question I want to ask. You talked about how your students are loved in the school, are known in the school, are seen in the school. We know that a school doesn't do that alone.
No.
And for any school, it's kind of a triangle, and the parts of that triangle are the school, the administrators, the adults there, the students,
and the most important part,
the family. So talk to me a little bit about how you all
people give a lot of lip service to this, and I'm so grateful that I come from the community, because I 100% know that my first educator were my mom and dad. And every mom and dad, or moms or dads, want the best for their kid and believe their kid is brilliant. And so if you want to have proximity to this idea of believing that the infinite possibility of a kid, spend time with that parent. And so I think what we've done is try to really shift culture. Now, parents as partners has always been part of our ethos at Alliance. I think sometimes I felt like that was superficial and not necessarily like true asset-based approach. I see differences of that now where there's a lot of investment in understanding that without our parents, we're never going to be able to ensure that our kid lives out their promise and potential. And so that could be from, I see schools really taking into ownership this idea of their school site advisory councils that include parents helping make decisions on budgets. I see that in ensuring that our parent-teacher conferences or our, we call them cafecito with the parents, you know, it's coffee and donuts, regular touch points that bring parents to get to know the school, but us to get to know parents, and then to really leverage parents' opinions and thoughts about where the direction of school should be. I hold an advisory committee, as I said, with scholars. I do so with parents. I love our parent advisory committee. They come in with advice. They want to tackle on advisory curriculum and wanting to ensure that the soft skills lost in the pandemic around socialization that enabled kids to have confidence in speaking in public spaces get addressed. They proposed a pilot around creating this an advisory curriculum that really addresses that.
I love that.
Right. So I think we see examples of that, and I know that our parents not only are thankful, but I'm thankful to them. And recently, our parents have come to speak at every single one of our board meetings. We usually have like 4 or 5 parents because they're hearing this anti-charter rhetoric happening in these other spaces. And often spaces that come in board meetings or other places as well within the Los Angeles area. And so our parents are now our best champions, and they're organizing themselves to come and speak to me like, I've had 6 kids through the Alliance. One's going to Middlebury. The other one's going to Carnegie Mellon. The other one is going to UC Riverside. So they become our champions. And in Latino culture, there's this like comadre, compadre culture, which is like, honestly, there's no better vetting of something other than someone that you personally know that's going to vouch for them. Right. And so in a place for charters where you're really struggling with enrollment, what you really need to be looking at is your network of, of family and friends that are going to be of your parents that are going to be the champions and that are going to ensure that the school is kept afloat if you treat them as partners, which also means that you have to have an investment in like having conversations, educating them about the context that you're in, having them inform the decisions that are there. That inclusive muscle, that's what we call an Alliance, really is something that I think there have been examples of charters. I saw some really strong examples, but overall, parents were not seen as assets. Parents were often viewed as deficit because it was this white savior mentality.
Something to go around, not
100%, because they were an obstacle.
That's right.
They're not your obstacle. They're the bedrock that's going to ensure that your kid persists through college.
That's right. I know the Alliance was founded by the departed Judy Burton, who was just a titan.
Yep.
Just a titan in this work.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little bit about what it was like to be influenced and inspired by her vision and carry on her legacy as a part of your leadership?
I personally didn't get to know Judy. I came in after Judy had passed, actually, a year later. And the reality is that Judy's legacy lives in all our schools, and I can feel it and see it. And so I came to know Judy through others who had worked closely with her and founders of Alliance who spoke about her in a way of reverence and of true passion for social justice that inspired me. And what I love about her story is that here we have a Black woman from South LA who chose to be a Spanish teacher and chose to be a bridge between the Black and brown communities that have had huge divisiveness for a long period of time within Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that Black and brown families did not see themselves as allies, but unfortunately, because of ideas that really pit communities of color against each other, saw each other as taking resources from one another. And Judy saw a vision of Black and brown neighbors going to a school that was worthy of their kids and worthy of this idea that every single child, regardless of your zip code, whether you're black or brown, was going to go to college. And Judy embodied that.
So powerful.
And, we've done a lot of work. We are a predominantly Latino organization, Daryl, who is unapologetically anti-racist and pro-black. Now, I understand that this is really controversial terms right now. It's not that controversial for us. We're black and brown. We're predominantly brown, and we have a lot of black families. And in some of our neighborhoods, our schools are 50-50 and should be 50-50 because our neighborhoods are 50-50. So this isn't a political statement. It's a fact. We're just predominantly Latino and predominantly African-American communities that we serve. We need to ensure that our communities are thriving civic places of where ideas are exchanged, where mutual interests are understood and made decisions upon, and where there is opportunities for learning of who your neighbors are. And schools enable that to do that. And that's what Judy saw. That's what Judy really envisioned when she built this. She wanted a great neighborhood school, period. And she knew that in the neighborhoods that we lived in, we were just black and brown folks. And so I think I am so thankful of her legacy. I'm so thankful that she had this audacious belief with our other founders. Frank Baxter, I think of the late Mayor Richard Reardon, who really thought about a different possibility for neighborhoods. And so the other thing I'm really thankful about in her legacy is that she was coming in at a time where the graduation rate of our schools in both low-income neighborhoods, but also very affluent areas of LA, which are very affluent public schools, the graduation rate in LAUSD was 49%. In our neighborhoods, it was somewhere in the 30s, sometimes lower. And she was like, that's such a low bar. How can you not even graduate high school? And within a short amount of time, all of our schools had over 95% graduation rate from high school. And so she believed it was possible, and within less than 10 years, she changed the circumstances for hundreds and thousands of families who said, no, you should be graduating high school because there's no reason that you should not have this career. And then was a leader in our A through G curriculum of college-ready curriculum in California. And then, of course, we're now in a place where we're sending most of our kids off to colleges. Most of those 84 to 4-year colleges, by the way. So that's not just that 2-year, right, where the other statistic I gave, but and where our kids are graduating from college, at 3.5 times the rate. And so much more work to do, and that's what motivates us. I think we're a really good to great and possibly excellent soon system that's really living out her promise.
Right. Well, I'm sure she is looking down now and is so proud of your leadership and what you're achieving.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you.
All right.